And thank you. This webinar outlines DESE supports that are available for newly arrived students who are residing in our emergency shelter system. As you can see, we will today cover some content from your colleague superintendents. We'll talk about addressing immediate needs, as well as instructional support, and end with some Q&A. But first, we will start with a welcome from our Commissioner, Jeffrey Riley.
Hello, I'm Jeffrey Riley, Commissioner of Elementary and Secondary Education here in Massachusetts. Thank you for joining this webinar today. Please know I am grateful for your work and inspired by your commitment to serving our kids. Today's webinar is focused on the needs of our newly arrived students who are coming through the emergency assistance shelter system. I want to acknowledge that this has taken Herculean efforts from you and your teams, and I want to talk for a minute about why this is so important. As a right to shelter state, it's not just our legal responsibility to help these children, but more than that, it's just morally and ethically the right thing to do. I am a parent, many of us are, and we are here to welcome the children in the way that we would want anyone welcoming our own children into a difficult situation. It starts with us as leaders. We have to communicate that our newly arrived students are not a burden, and that we have an opportunity here to welcome and serve them and their families. I know many of us have faced some challenges with the shelter system or getting additional resources, and we appreciate you navigating those challenges. We at DESE are trying to do everything we can from the teaching and learning standpoint to support you in supporting our kids. And that's a lot of what you'll learn about today. You'll hear from Anne-Marie Stronach and Kristen McKinnon about some of the whole child supports we can offer. You'll hear from Allison Balter and Como Bassine about support we can offer on the instructional end. And you'll be able to sign up for services from DESE such as translation and interpretation and professional learning, all at no cost to you, and some additional technical assistance opportunities, either virtual or in person. Thank you. I'm grateful for your work and deeply appreciate the work you and your educators are doing. Ultimately, we're here to support you. We welcome your feedback on what more we can do to help in the process.
Thank you, Commissioner. So before we get started with today, I want to just start with a few logistics. Today's recording, slide deck, and all the resources that we described today will be made available to you after the webinar at this website here, which we'll also place in the chat. At the end of the webinar, we'll turn off the recording and then use time to answer your questions. So throughout this webinar, please direct them in the chat to my colleague, Kinnan Foley, and we will do our best as we can to answer as many at the end of this recording. And just one more note on terminology that we'll use in this webinar. We know that in the social service sector, the term migrant is being used a lot in this context. But as many of you know, in the educational world, the term migrant student actually has a very specific definition, and that it's a federally mandated term describing a student whose parent or guardian is a migratory worker in the agricultural, dairy, lumber, or fishing industries, and whose family has moved in the past 3 years. So for the purposes of this webinar and DESE work, we're going to use the term newly arrived student or newcomer student. And we hope that you'll join us in setting the tone to use terminology that is both accurate and asset-based. So with those logistics under our belt, it's my honor to introduce two of our wonderful colleagues, Dr. Stephen Zreich from Salem and Dr. Carrie Ann Quinlan-Joe from Bourne. We'll start by hearing from Dr. Zreich. Steve, do you want to come off mute? All right, well, we will start actually with Dr. Quinlan-Joe.
All right, can you hear me okay? Fantastic, thumbs up all around. So thank you for having me today. I'm really pleased to be here and to help out any superintendents who need the help. If you don't know where Bourne is, you pass by it when you go over any of the bridges going on to the Cape, because we're on both sides of the canal, and we have a little under 1,600 students. So we were, as I say, a formerly low incidence district where we had around 20 EL students, and we more than tripled, perhaps quadrupled, literally overnight. What we really tried to do as some key practices to foster understanding is just go right back to our own core values. And you can see that here on the screen. So BPS for us stands for building community, promoting equity, and striving for excellence. And we do these things really well all the time. In Bourne, we really pride ourselves on being an inclusive practices community. We also have Joint Base Cape Cod, so there is a level of transience for welcoming families in the military. Every year we have new kiddos joining us. So we really wanted to help our educators and our community realize that as a school district, we do many of these things already. We have, again, as the canalmen, so we have a lot of nautical terms. We did an all hands on deck approach. And what that means is that everyone from volunteers, school committee members, administrators, lots of teaching staff and ESPs, we rallied together to really meet the families where they were at, but then also have continuing support. Sometimes what that looks like is the superintendent being a substitute in a class so that teachers can meet with parents, or any number of things regarding translation. We really didn't know how many people we had in our district who had language skills, whether it be in French or Spanish or Portuguese, and we were really pleasantly surprised folks came out to help. Another thing that we really tried to do right away, like as soon as we found out, which like many of you, we got very little notice. But as soon as we found out that we were going to be welcoming new families, we really tried to look at our staffing, and having some of the funding in place to know that that funding was there was super important for us. So we did add an ESL teacher right off the bat. We welcomed back a retired person. That was probably, the best that we could do for now, but we are still actively looking for a full-time person. And then we started to put into place translation services, because as many of you know, some of the families that we're welcoming into our school district are speaking various numbers of languages, and we really didn't have the internal structure. So moving on to the next slide, I do have two. And you can see I do want to call attention to all of these really beautiful kids who are now in our district. They're just wonderful and doing really, really, really well. So the other thing that we tried to do is give a lot of opportunities for engagement. Again, if you think about what you're doing in your schools every day, all the time, these are things that you would want to do anyway. So what we had is a school visit day, which means that before they started school, we had the advantage of 1 week notice before school started. So we had buses and parents and children, and we really showed them all 4 of our schools. Another thing that we did a little later on, which our teachers found really helpful, were interviews with between teachers, adjustment counselors, and the families. So we use live translation services to have these interviews to really find out, what's on the minds of parents, to really talk to, especially our high school and middle school students, to see, how has your first few weeks gone here? Do you have any needs? Are there things that we could be doing better? How do you feel in our schools? And those, I think, those noted a turning point, I think, in the minds of some of our staff who were, I think, more worried about their own teaching, right? I think that when you're in a low incidence district, I came from a high incidence district before this, but I saw that there was a feeling of inadequacy, that like, we're not good enough, we don't know how to do this. So again, pulling on the fact that they do know how to do this, and then providing the supports, because those interviews showed teachers these new students are doing fine. There is a time where they're going to be very quiet, where they're taking it in. They would like some more supports. They would like to be involved in athletics more, or co-curricular events. But in general, they were really happy to be with us in our schools. So that helped to foster even better relations. Second to the last point that I'd like to hit on is around communication. Again, if you don't know Bourne, we are a town that trends a little more conservative than others, and we have very open-minded school systems. So we did have, and still continue to have, folks in town who have vocal opinions. So I'll go with the last bullet first, which is stay on message and filter out the noise. I mean, we are a school district. This is our charge. We teach children. These children are ours. So these are really basic things that people understand. And then, as always, really work with stakeholders and agencies and organizations to the best that you can. Coordination and communication is a very hard thing, especially with the many different organizations involved. But the more that you try to foster those relationships and try to coordinate it, the better. And then the last bullet point, we're in this process continually, which is to build capacity systems and structures. So really having a listening ear to our staff, and really noting the fact this is hard work. People are taking professional development. They're trying to learn Spanish. They're doing all kinds of extra prep work and things to make things accessible. But I think the more that we build it and we have this feedback loop with our staff, the more you'll be able to build capacity in systems and structures. So that's my quick 2-slide overview. And I really, again, want to thank you guys for all the work you're doing out there. And if you have my phone number, you feel free to call me anytime.
Thank you so much. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Steve Zreich from Salem Public Schools.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to be here, and yeah, I'll just humbly share a little bit about our work and how we're thinking about welcoming newcomers. And so in Salem, we have about 72 students who arrived a year ago, almost a year ago, last November, December, to our city. And what we've tried to do is anchor the work that we do around our strategic plan, or the way we think about welcoming new families, and especially around belonging and equity. That, you know, the message has to be clear, that this is connected to our priority 3 in our strategic plan, and our values around making sure that all community members are valued, and that relationships are built on empathy and respect. That, you know, we don't ask questions. We don't really care what the past is. We're just excited to have new folks in our community, and they're just part of the richness of the city that we serve. We're a very diverse city as is, and this just adds additional diversity to our community, brings new ideas, brings new experiences. And then to you know, and the thing I like about working in a public school, a traditional public school system, is that we take all kids. I mean, we welcome anybody, anytime, any part of the year, and that's you know, connected to our value of equity. That you know, that it's not just about them feeling like they belong, but they actually have that new families feel like they have a voice, they have an opportunity to engage, and that they're listened to as they arrive to their new home, which we hope will be their home for a long period of time. You can go to the next slide. And so I do think the tone does start with the leadership of the district. You know, certainly starts with the superintendent, as you know, as the superintendent in the school system. I set the tone, but I also think it's the leadership team. I think it's the executive team. I think it's school leaders, principals in every school, who have to own this message, because if it breaks down somewhere along the way, then others are going to get mixed messages about it, because it's as the superintendent from Bourne mentioned, there are a lot of people that want to go to the negative. I've had reporters ask me, you know, this must be so difficult. This is such a burden for you and the district. Then they're baiting. What they're doing is baiting me to say, yeah, this is the hardest thing we've ever had to do. When the reality is that's not the case. And if we go there, if our leadership teams go there, then the rest of the community will follow suit. So we've got to make sure that the message is pretty clear, that these families are an asset. Like I said before, they're not a burden. They're part of what makes us a unique community. And we're just, you know, like we're a transient community. This is just another group of families that have joined our family. And the consistent messaging is important. I think, you know, there have been different moments in time that we've had to remind folks of this message. I think every time there's an article in the paper, or there's a new community that's pushing back on having newcomers in their community, we have to remind folks what our message is and what the tone is. Because, you know, just in our case, they've been here almost a year, but every time it's in, you know, on the news, the national news, it's a reminder that we have to re-message to folks what our how important it is to connect this work back to our core values as a school system. I also think it's really important that back to the equity value is that we're listening to what our families tell us and their experiences, and learn from them. I think there's this, you know, this quick, people are quick to say, well, we have a lot to give them and show them and teach them, when in reality, the families have a lot to teach us, right? And they have a lot to say, a lot to share. They are some of the most resilient, dynamic people. We like in Salem, we have some Haitian immigrants who speak Spanish fluently, better than some of our Spanish speakers because they lived in other countries after leaving Haiti. They've lived in multiple countries, or some of them lived in Brazil, so their Portuguese is fluent. It's amazing how talented both the parents and the children are because of the varied experiences they've had on their way to getting to Salem. And so it's really important to hear what they have to say and ensure that we're, again, seeing the assets they bring and also responding to some of the concerns and issues that they've raised. They've raised issues around internet access. They've raised issues around wanting to work and trying to find ways to work. There's these assumptions that, they don't care, they don't want to work, they're not interested in working. That's all just that's just perception on people's part. But this idea that they want to stay in the community, they're committed to staying here. They are also really invested in their child's education. It's important to remind people that these families care deeply. They wouldn't be here if they didn't care deeply about their child's education. They wanted a stable place. They wanted to come to a state and to a country that would accept them for who they are and give their children the education they think they deserve. And so just having those conversations with families is just a reminder. And it's important that as many leaders as possible can hear the stories and listen directly from the powerful testimonies and narratives. But in the end, for us, and I think for our state, while it appears to be a challenge, this can add tremendous value to the community. And the last thing I say, for us, our enrollment was declining. And for the fact that we have over 70 new students in our district is a huge asset to us in terms of our Chapter 70 funding. I'm worried about losing families. We've dropped tremendously over, during the pandemic, and this gives us an opportunity. We're excited that now we're receiving new resources. And I remind people of that too. There's so many wins, not the least of which is that we want to be full, and we want to we want our enrollment to be as high as possible so that we can provide our kids with the best experience possible. So my perspective and thoughts from our work here in the Salem Public Schools. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Zweig, and thank you also, Dr. Quinlan-Joe. Just really appreciate your positive framing, and thank you, as well as all our colleagues here, for your tremendous effort on behalf of our kids. So it's my pleasure now to introduce my colleagues Anne-Marie Stronach and Krista McKinnon, who will speak about supports available to address the immediate needs of our newly arrived students.
I'm going to come off mute. Thank you so much, Komal, and thank you, superintendents. I have great admiration for the programs that you are running. I was actually able to go to Bourne and to see some of that work, and to see that in action is really just heartwarming and makes what we do every day a pleasure. So I want to thank you for that, as well as everybody on this call. I do want to thank everybody because they still pick up the phone when I call them. So many of you get calls from me late in the evening or on the weekends with little to no notice, letting you know that a shelter is being opened in your city or town. And I give you very scarce details. And I try to provide you with as much information as we have. But as you all know, because you've all been doing this, it is not always easy to get all the information. And obviously, this presents a unique need where the families present and then have to place. So there's no time for noticing. I can't apologize that enough. But as soon as we're able to, we do give you that information. So in the summer, we put together a homeless guidance document that contains a lot of overreaching guidance that many of you have already been using and utilizing. Since school has begun, we've been talking to all of you, kind of collecting some best practices, working with the MASS on a document that we're calling recommended action steps for districts. And we're rolling that out today. We've sent that to a few of you. And this is basically when you get the call from me, what are those immediate steps that you may want to take? They did just drop that in the chat for you all. And considering how you should kind of approach this with your community, who can be your partners in your community, and some immediate things that you might want to think about. So we're really pleased with that document, and we tried to capture buckets that we thought would be most important. It's not complete. We know that as this rolls out, we're gonna add more to that, and hearing from the best practices that you all are doing, we're just gonna continue to share those out. So we hope that you find that useful. And with that, I'm gonna turn it over to my colleague, Kristen McKinnon, who is the Director of Family and Student Supports. And she's gonna talk about ed stability and some resources there.
Anne Marie. And just want to reiterate the thanks to all of you for being here today and for the work you're doing to support our children that are joining our community. So we wanted to just make sure that you're all aware of the ongoing support and resources through the Educational Stability Team. Our team is focused on helping schools and districts help students and families who are experiencing homelessness in foster care, in those migrant families that Komal defined earlier, or in military families. Our role really is to help support you to do the work to welcome these students in, to navigate the laws related to their rights as students experiencing homelessness or in any of those other categories. We have lots of resources available for you, your homeless liaisons, your family liaisons, and others in your community, your registrar, who are helping to support these students. So we want to make sure you access those resources that you need, and let us know what other resources could be helpful. We offer office hours monthly, and other orientations and trainings available to help navigate those sort of technical details around enrolling all of your students who are experiencing homelessness in these new expansion sites. Next slide, please. We wanted to also just talk a little bit about some of the supplemental funding opportunities that are available. The first of which is the Fund Code 344 Homeless Emergency Support Grant. This is a one-time grant. It's available to meet the immediate needs that you're seeing as you're enrolling students from the emergency expansion shelters. This is available now to all of the districts that are currently housing a homeless hotel expansion site. And you are able to apply for $1,000 per student that you've enrolled in your district that's placed in that site. If you have questions about that grant, you can contact me. Our contact information is on the slides, and we can help navigate your application. Many of you know also that there is funding available through the state supplemental budget. This funding is to support that longer term need and impact, to support the hiring you're doing, all of those kinds of things. And you're eligible for $104 per day per eligible student. We will distribute those funds again this year quarterly, approximately quarterly, and we'll be in touch very soon with a new process about that. Our process from last year just isn't sustainable given the new volume that we're seeing. So sometime in November, you'll hear from us to let you know about that new process so that you can get your claims in to receive that first quarterly payment. And then finally, as just an ongoing support, the McKinney-Vento homeless transportation reimbursement is available. And just want to be clear that this transportation reimbursement is for students. So students who may be placed in a hotel in your community that end up finding more permanent housing or finding another shelter location. Any of those students then would have a right to return to your community as their school of origin, and you could access this transportation reimbursement to make sure that they can get there. And that's a shared cost between you and the new district where they'd be living. Again, more details about that, but your reimbursements come in every year in September for the previous year on that funding source. Anne Marie, did I miss anything?
No, actually, that was great. And if you have questions after this, you know how to get a hold of us and we're here to help. So please feel free to give us a call. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Como.
Thanks so much, Anne Marie and Kristen. We've heard from many of you that while a lot of focus has gone to supporting students' immediate needs, you're hearing from educators that we need support with instruction. And so my colleague Allison Balter will kick us off to speak to some of the instructional resources that we can make available to you.
Thanks, Komal. Hi, everyone. My name is Allison Balter. I'm the director of the Office of Language Acquisition here at DESE, and also a former ESL teacher and school leader working with newcomer English learners. So I'm excited to be here with you today, and just again, echoing my colleagues, deeply appreciative of your leadership and work to support newcomer students and families right now. So, as Komal mentioned, the work that you have in front of you, the work that we all have in front of us it has to be a collaborative and coordinated effort. We have to address, of course, the basic needs, the wraparound services that students and families need when they arrive, but we also have to simultaneously plan for effective instruction. Those two go hand in hand. And we've heard from a lot of you, especially those of you who are in districts that may have traditionally been lower incidence or lower EL enrollment districts, and are now experiencing, the arrival of more English learners for the first time, that you may have not had a broad infrastructure for English learner education before. And now you're, faced with sort of developing new programming, and you're wondering about, do I need more ESL teachers? How about bilingual paraprofessionals or staff? What about SEI endorsement? How do I structure services and schedules in such a way that meets the needs of English learners? So we know those are all very real and important questions that you're all wrestling with. And we know those are also questions that the answers vary based on context. And so that's why we want to provide some targeted support to you as you're working through these questions in your districts. Next slide. And so in order to support you with this, we have developed a tool that we're calling our district level needs assessment. That is designed in order to help you identify areas of strength and areas of need in your current programming for English learners, and to help you prioritize some next steps or areas of support. This particular tool, which you can find on the web page that's been shared in the chat with you, it's actually based on a couple of things. We sort of consolidated some resources and best practices from the U.S. Department of Education, including their newcomer toolkit, which came out updated very recently, as well as DESE guidance and instructional resources. And we tried to, take hundreds of pages of guidance and tools and condense those down into a very brief, accessible document for you. So this is not as comprehensive as our English Learner Blueprint. This is really designed to be very concise, very immediate and actionable things. And we're going to walk through it briefly with you right now, but then talk about ways that we can support you in using this in your contexts. Next slide. So the way that this tool is broken down, there are two sections. The first one is about welcoming newcomers in a safe and inclusive environment, and the second one is about setting up instructional systems and best practices. And at the beginning of each section, you'll see there are a few bullets, really, in sort of concise, accessible language to remind you of the legal requirements that we all have to meet in these particular areas. And then below those legal requirements, you'll see some specific questions and best practices around meeting these needs. And these are designed to help you kind of go through and reflect again on your own program, your own context. What's going well? What are you already doing? And where might you need to consider working on? And then we've aligned those to some specific resources and links. And so this example here that we've just zoomed in on talks about how to plan and implement a uniform intake process for newcomers. And you can see the questions here that you can reflect on and consider. Are you doing these already? Are there things you might want to consider? And then, of course, to the right, we've linked some additional resources from DESE, from and things that are very concrete and specific, right? A couple of key pages from our guidance on English learner services and programs, a sample SLIFE intake interview that you could use or adapt, and links to home language surveys and parent notification templates in 30 languages. So trying to, again, just pull from all the different various resources and areas on our website and other tools and make them right there at your fingertips as you work on developing or improving programs. Next slide. So this needs assessment, again, is designed to help you. And I imagine some of you are saying, great, this will be a super helpful tool. I'm ready right now to fill it out, or I'm ready to sit down with my leadership team and work through it. And then, connect right into the DESE supports that Komal's going to talk about in a minute. Or others may be, thinking, well, I need a little more support with this. I might want to sit down with some support from DESE to walk through this with me, or I might, just need a little more time to get some questions answered. And so to address those various needs and meet you all where you're at as individual districts, we have made a sort of menu of technical support and technical assistance options. So you'll see here at the bottom of this image, we have supports available to all districts, right? Starting with today's virtual kickoff, to explain to you, what resources are we making available to every one of you free of cost? How could you use this needs assessment on your own to identify and prioritize areas to work on with regard to your programming? And so if that's, the right place for you to start, you can begin right there. If you're thinking, well, I would like some additional support, we're thinking about how to adapt or change our instructional program, you can sign up for some virtual technical assistance from some of us on the DESE team, and we'll connect via Zoom. We can talk through specific questions you have, or we can actually work through some of that needs assessment with you and help you prioritize specific areas and resources that correspond to those areas. Finally, you might be saying, well, I really need a lot of support here. We would love to have someone come in and sit with us, sit with our team to walk through this needs assessment together, to help us prioritize what areas we need to work on, and maybe connect us with one of those partners that DESE is going to be providing. And so to access that, you could request some extended consultation, and our team can actually come out to your district and, for a morning or an afternoon, and meet with you and your team, or walk through classrooms and support you in that way. We won't be able to do that in all districts, unfortunately. We'll have to prioritize as well, but certainly want to make these various options available to you so that we can meet you where you're at. And the team who will be providing this technical assistance will be myself, Komal Basine, and Kinnan Foley will be the leads of the team. We will bring in other DESE folks as necessary, depending on what your priorities are and what you're looking for support with. But I did want to, just mention the three of us who'll be leading this team have been involved in the work at the district level, at the school level for quite some time, specifically working in districts and schools that welcome newcomers and their families, and have done so for many years. And so this is an area that we have experience with and are passionate about, and are really looking forward to working with you to support you in any way that you need. And we'll turn that back over to Komal.
Thanks so much, Allison. I'm here to talk about a few additional resources that we'll be able to provide through DESE. And we really want to thank our colleagues at MASS and the Superintendent Task Force that they convened, who shared with us the survey results from you all about what would be most helpful. So in reviewing these, we heard a request for technical assistance, which Allison described, and we heard a few key themes emerge about additional support requested, which I'll outline below. First, we heard that districts need support with translation and interpretation resources. So we made available to you our contract for translation and interpretation. So this includes translation of documents, whether they are educational documents, field trip permission slips, interpretation via phone, as well as some virtual settings. So this resource is available to you immediately. At the end of this webinar, we'll share a sign-up link with you that enables you to identify your district point person, give us their contact information, and we'll essentially send them a PIN that enables you to access these services and charge them to DESE. We also heard from you that there's a need for support to educators as they pursue ESL licensure or receive SEI endorsement. So we are working to make available a large number of seats in SEI endorsement courses, all at no cost to educators and no cost to your district. These courses will begin in multiple rounds, so we'll launch a winter round shortly, a spring round, and then a summer and fall round. And in the same sign-up link for translation and interpretation, you can also indicate your interest in these courses. Again, identify a point person for us to work with in your district regarding enrolling teachers in these courses. And we're also working on free ESL MTEL prep courses via self-paced modules, which we anticipate releasing to your educators in late October. So that is pretty soon. And finally, we've heard from many of you that there may be a need for ongoing professional learning for educators. So in the survey, some of you noted that some educators may have taken the SCI courses a while back and want a refresher. Others may have said they need more strategies for instruction or trauma-informed practices, or you may want support for your instructional leaders or district-specific professional learning that fits within your existing professional development calendar. So we've launched a bid for PD providers with EL expertise. And so we'll make a short list of vetted providers available to you, and then we can support you in choosing partners from within that list based on what you need. And again, these professional learning services will come to you at no cost to you, as DESE will cover that cost. As you all understand, with our procurement policies, we need to wait for that bid to close before we can match districts with those services. So we anticipate those services being available within the next month. Though you will be able to sign up today, express interest, and identify a point person for us to contact once that becomes available. I will like to note that these three services are not open to every single district in the state. We are prioritizing funds for these particular services for this group of districts on this webinar that are welcoming newly arrived students in the emergency shelter service. So that just is important to note that as you can imagine, there's a cost associated with these services, and we are prioritizing them for those of you who are, all of those on this webinar who are supporting this group of students. So we've discussed technical assistance from DESE, translation interpretation, SEI courses, PD providers. You might be wondering, how do you sign up? So here's the link that I promised. You can access it directly through this QR code or on the website that we keep dropping in the chat. It is right here, if you can see it. It is on our site. But as always, we view our role at DESE as supporting you and partnering with you to serve our students, to help them feel valued and welcomed, included, and engaged in our school system. And we are really grateful and appreciative of the work that you all are doing. So at this point, I will turn to Allison to launch the Q&A section. So we will stop the recording at this point. We may, for some of you, we may wrap up a little early, but I encourage you to stay on the webinar link while you're filling out the sign-up form, so that if any questions arise as you fill out that sign-up form, you can ask us live any of those questions.